What if a haunting was not attached to a person, but attached to an object they may own? Years before Deepwood's Paranormal, back when we were known as the California Ghost Hunters, we were investigating a rental storage unit in a public storage facility. This was not a normal haunted house case. This was a storage unit filled with objects, and some of those objects may have had something attached to them. The location was very active. There were loud bangs, talking when no one was there, multiple types of activity, possible haunted objects, possible cursed objects, and maybe even something darker with attachments. Before we even entered the building, we performed spiritual protection outside the storage facility. That's when we captured the AVP of something laughing at us. And while the case was unfolding, the clients reported disturbing things happening at their home, including a gas stove turning on without the pilot light igniting, emotional heaviness affecting their daughter, and other negative events. But this did not appear to be attached to the clients. It appeared to be attached to objects inside the storage units. Tonight we will open the case file. Welcome back to the Deepwoods Paranormal Podcast. I'm Matt Harvey, the founder of Deepwoods Paranormal, and this is where we make the paranormal normal. Tonight's episode is a little different because we're going back into our old investigation history. Before Deepwoods Paranormal, our team operated under the name California Ghost Hunters. This case comes from that era, and this is a case that stuck with me for a long time. This was not a haunted house. It was not a cemetery. It was not an abandoned hospital or an old hotel. These were rented storage units at a public storage facility, the kind of place people use every day to store furniture, boxes, antiques, family belongings, tools, old photographs, and items they do not want inside their home anymore. But in this case, the activity appeared to be centered around objects inside the storage units, not the clients, the objects. And this is what made the case so interesting and so disturbing. Before we get into the details, I want to say something important. We are not claiming that every bad thing that happened during this case was paranormal. When you're dealing with things like gas appliances, emotional health, or safety concerns, those things have to be taken seriously first. If a gas stove turns on without a pilot light igniting, that's a real world danger. That needs to be checked by a qualified professional. If someone is experiencing depression, emotional heaviness, or sudden change in mental health, that needs care, support, and professional help. As a paranormal investigator, our job is not to ignore the normal explanations. Our job is to document, compare timing, look at patterns, review evidence, and ask whether something unexplained may be happening alongside concerns. So with that said, let's get into the case. Most people think of haunted locations as households, cemeteries, battlefields, hotels, or abandoned buildings. But storage units are interesting because they hold objects from all kinds of places and all kinds of lives. Inside a storage unit facility, you can have antiques, old furniture, mirrors, dolls, jewelry, religious items, family heirlooms, estate belongings, boxes from deceased relatives, or items connected to trauma, grief, conflict, or loss. Sometimes people store things because they don't have room for them. Sometimes they store things because they are moving. Sometimes they inherit items and do not know what to do with them. And sometimes people put objects in storage because they do not want them in their house anymore. That part matters. Because if you believe objects can carry energy, memories, spirit attachments, or something darker, then a storage unit can become more than a place to keep belongings. It can become a container for unknown history. Every door in a storage facility has a different story behind it. And in this case, it seems like a lot of those seem to have something active behind it. So let's talk about the California Ghost Hunters history and era. The California Ghost Hunters era. This was about 20 years ago. We started out as the California Ghost Hunters with about 3 or 4 people and just basically started. And I'll just give a quick, brief history here so you guys can kind of know. If you've listened to the podcast for the last 3 years, you know what I'm talking about. But going back in the history, started out as just Amanda and I going to haunted locations and staying the night, like at hotels or just visiting haunted locations for fun. No gear, just fun to see if we could experience something, right? Um, then it turned into us trying to go investigate those places with a few friends and try and have an experience and try and document it. And as time went on, the show Ghost Hunters came on, and basically somebody said, during Christmas party, they looked at, we were watching that show, they had it on because of me and my involvement with ghost hunting. And they said, Matt, that's you. Why aren't you helping people in their homes? And so basically that started the California Ghost Hunters about 1998, I think it was. So a long time ago. Fast forward about 10 years. At this point, we had about 15 or 20 members. Um, we had a lot of gear. We had basically 3 teams. I was running 3 teams, and we were helping people in their homes. And I got this case, and I took about 6 people with me to the storage unit to see what was going on. And we'll kind of talk about it as we go. But the California Ghost Hunters, I ran them for about 15 years. We were basically just doing tons of investigations, helping people. I mean, we went through thousands of homes, probably hundreds of businesses, ships, hotels, theaters, land. I mean, we were investigating everything ghost wise. And after about 15 years, I basically handed the team over to a friend of mine and said, "Hey, you continue the research. I'm going to go do something different." And kind of took a break from ghost hunting for about 3 or 4 months because I got burned out because we were just doing so much stuff. But those were amazing days. Got to meet a lot of people and had a lot of fun, celebrities and stuff like that, and producers. And we almost had a show. Unfortunately, we were too much like the current show, Ghost Hunters. I'm not even sure Ghost Hunters is even on anymore, but we were basically just like them, debunking and then basically trying to figure out what was left and stuff like that. So, quick, brief history. Okay. So, this case happened before Deepwood's Paranormal. At this time, again, we were known as the California Ghost Hunters. This was an earlier chapter in our paranormal work, but a lot of what we learned during this time shaped the way we investigate today, aka learning to debunk, making sure that we're not calling something paranormal that isn't, and just making sure we're verifying things as best we can to make sure we're not calling something a ghost or a Bigfoot or UFO or whatever before finding out that it's really those things. That was an earlier chapter in our paranormal work. Oh no, I've already read that. When you first start investigating, you learn quickly that not every case is the same. Some cases feel like residual energy, something replaying over and over, like a rerun on TV. The activity seems to happen no matter what. If you don't know what residual energy is, it's, like I said, it's kind of like a rerun on TV where things will happen no matter what, whether you're there, whether you're not. It doesn't react to anything. It could be footsteps walking down the stairs. It could be the sound of a door opening and closing. It could be a scream. It could be anything, and it just doesn't react to anything. It's just like a scar or whatever on history. So some cases feel intelligent, like something is aware of you. Some cases feel connected to a location. Some feel connected to a person. And some feel connected to an object. This case fell into that category. It felt like we were dealing with an object. It felt like we were dealing with objects with attachments, and possibly more than one. So the location was a public storage rental facility. It was not an abandoned place. It was not some old mansion. It was not a place where people would think normally would be haunted. This was a kind of place where people rented units, stored their belongings, locked the door, and left. Rows of metal storage doors, concrete floors, long hallways, boxes and furniture behind locked units. A normal everyday location. But the reports come in, but the reports coming from this storage unit were not normal. The clients were dealing with activity that seemed to be connected to whatever was inside the units. And from what we understood, the units had several objects that raised concern. Some felt spiritually heavy, some may have been haunted, some may have been cursed, and some felt darker than others. So the reports included loud bangs coming from the area, different floors, the elevator turning on and moving up and down on its own, opening, the doors would open and close, people getting locked inside the elevator, not just little settling noises, loud bangs. There was also talking heard when no one was there. The owners could hear talking inside the units, I mean, coming from inside the hallways. And they had surveillance cameras, and they would look on those floors, and there would be nobody there. And that's one of the reports that always gets your attention because voices suggest something more than just a building making noises. When you hear talking in a place where no one's supposed to be talking, you have to start asking questions. Was it contamination from your nearby units? Was it somebody outside? Was it sound traveling through the building? Or was something actually responding? The location outside of multiple types of activity. That's another important point. This did not feel like an isolated report. This was not just one bang. It was not just one weird feeling. It was a combination of physical activity, audible activity, emotional heaviness, objects concerns, and EVP evidence. And when you have multiple categories of activity happening at the same time, at the same case, this is when it becomes harder to dismiss. So the focus of this case was not the clients themselves. That's important. We did not believe something was attached to them. The concern was that something was attached to objects inside the storage units. There may have been more than one active object in there. That changes the investigation. When you're dealing with a haunted location, you're trying to understand the building, the land, the history, and the experiences people are having there. But when you're dealing with haunted objects or curse objects, the focus shifts. You start asking yourself, what object is causing the activity? Where did it come from? Who owned it before? Was it inherited? Was it purchased? Was it removed from a home because it felt wrong? Did the activity increase when the object was moved? Did the activity follow the object from one place to another? Those questions matter because sometimes the building is not the problem. Sometimes the object is. And here's the other problem. With a storage unit, you've got all these locked lockers, right? You've got all these locked storage units. We don't know what's behind them. We don't know any of the history of any of the items in these boxes or the furniture or whatever it is. We don't know what's causing the activity. And so that makes it way more harder. You can't just open the door and say, hey, let's start looking through boxes, or hey, let's go in there and we'll use the K2 to try and figure out if somebody's in here and try and get to some hits on that. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot of paranormal activity gear. You had K2s, you had certain type of EMF detectors with numbers. We didn't have spirit boxes. We didn't have ghost boxes. We had audio recorders. We did a lot of EVP sessions. We had, of course, handy cams with night vision and stuff like that. But there wasn't a lot of gear back then, at least at this point. This is 20 plus years ago. It's not like today where you can go to the store. Oh, don't look at the gear back there. That's another video. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of information. We had very little information. We just knew what was going on with the clients, and then we had the reports that they were telling us, plus their clientele, because they own the storage unit, was coming up to them and reporting things hearing noises, hearing whispering when nobody else was there, footsteps, the elevator locking them inside, which terrified them, and stuff like that. There was just a lot of reports, but no real. It's coming from here. It's coming from there, and it makes this case so much more difficult. We've talked about spiritual protection before, and let's just talk about it real quick involving this case. So basically, before we entered the building, we were performing a spiritual protection outside the storage facility. Back then, that was part of our process, especially because this case felt heavier than normal. We wanted to make sure that, number one, we weren't affected in a negative way. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't bringing anything into the case that wasn't, was coming with us from another case or followed us or came in with us from outside. So when you're dealing with possible cursed objects, haunted items, or darker attachments, you do not just walk in carelessly. You have to prepare. You have to protect yourself. You have to set your boundaries. You have to take this case seriously. During the spiritual protection, one of the ladies outside had an audio recorder around her neck and it was recording, and we captured an EVP. It sounded like something was mocking us and then laughed at us. And I'm pretty sure it said something like, "Do you really think that's going to work?" And then it laughed. That moment changed the tone of the investigation. She actually played the audio recording back for us because she thought she heard something. Because if that EVP was what it sounded like, then whatever was there may have been aware of what we were doing before we even went inside. And the timing is what made it stand out. It did not happen casually during a normal conversation. It happened during our protection ceremony. That makes it feel mocking, almost like whatever was in there was reacting to the protection itself. This is when the case started feeling less like simple residual energy and more like something intelligent. Something was aware of us, something that didn't want us there. So let's talk about the differences between haunted objects, cursed objects, and darker attachments. A haunted object is usually thought as an item with spiritual activity connected to it. It could be a doll, a mirror, piece of furniture, jewelry, clothing, tools, photographs, religious items, or personal belongings. Sometimes people believe a spirit is attached to an object because the item mattered to them in life. Other times, the object may have been present during a trauma, a death, a grief, an emotional event. A cursed object is different. A cursed object suggests that the item carries negative energy, misfortune, or intentional spiritual harm. Now, not everyone believes in curses, and we have to be very careful with that word. But in paranormal work, we do come across cases where people report bad luck, sickness, emotional heaviness, nightmares, arguments, accidents, or oppressive energy connected to one specific item. When you have darker attachments, this is when the activity feels more aggressive, mocking, oppressive, or spiritually dangerous. This is where people sometimes use the word demonic. And I'm very careful with that word. Not every case is demonic. Not every growl, bang, shadow, or bad feeling means a demon. But there are cases where the behavior feels different, more intelligent, more hostile, more manipulative. And in this case, because of the activity, the objects, the heaviness, and the laughing EVP during protection, we have to consider whether something darker was connected to one or more of the items inside the storage unit. Object attachments are complicated because activity may not stay in one place the way local based haunting does. If the object moves, the activity may appear to move with it. If the object is stored away, the activity may go quiet. If the object is handled, opened, disturbed, or brought back into a home, the activity may increase. This is what makes cases like this difficult. You're not always just investigating a building. You're not always investigating history. You're not always investigating ownership. You're investigating emotional energy connected to a physical item. And sometimes you're trying to figure out which object is the trigger. Was it one object? Was it several? Was the whole unit affected because multiple active objects were stored together? That was one of the big questions in this case, because a storage unit did not feel like one simple haunting. It felt like multiple types of energy were present, almost like a storm of activity inside multiple storage units. So, yeah, I mean, there was definitely a little bit of residual energy, more than likely. There was definitely intelligence because whatever's there knew we were there. It seemed to react to us and interact with us, and sometimes in a hostile way. The footsteps, and then basically the elevator. We were in the elevator because that was one of the reports. We took the elevator up to the third floor, and then as we were coming back down, it got stuck on the second floor, in between the second and third floor, for about 10 minutes. And of course, we didn't have cell phone service, so we couldn't call out the little walkie talkie we had that we were using to communicate with the owners that were watching, monitoring everything through their security cameras in the building. They were saying that basically, no, we don't know what's going on. We don't hear anything. We can't see you. We don't know what's going on with the elevator. And finally, I said, you need to stop. You need to start messing with the elevator. You need to let us go. And the elevator turned back on and went back down, and we got off the dang elevator. That was creepy to have the elevator basically stop like that. That was really freaky. But that was one of the reports. It had happened to multiple people where the elevator would just stop in between floors or whatever and completely turn off. I mean, the lights, I don't think the lights went out, but everything else went off. All the buttons and everything, all the lights went out. This is a brand new building. It's not like it's a, old building and they had the elevator checked and there was nothing wrong with it. So that was definitely creepy. So let's talk about the activity at the client's house because this was happening while we were investigating. The daughter was at home, and like I said, the gas turned on the stove without the pilot light coming on. Thank God she smelled it and ran over there and turned it off. And then she went back into her room after she opened the doors to let the gas smell out. And it happened to her again. So it happened twice. And they left. And they left us with the keys, and we ended up returning them to them later. But all right. So during the case, the clients also reported disturbing activity happening at their house. One of the most serious reports was that gas stove turned on multiple times without the pilot light igniting. So this was not just paranormal sounding, this was dangerous. Anytime gas is involved, you treat that as a safety issue first. You get it checked, make sure the appliance is safe. You do not assume paranormal before ruling out the real world dangers. The client also reported emotional heaviness affecting their daughter, including depression, along with other negative events happening around their house. And this happened right after we had investigated the first time. I think we investigated twice at this place. And finally, the negativity at their house and the fighting between the mom and the dad, and the daughter becoming very emotionally unstable. We called it quits because it was doing emotional damage to them. Also, it had one of our teammates. She had some kind of scary thing happen at her house and gave her depression after that. She actually quit the team, unfortunately, but we checked on her and kept monitoring her, and she was fine. She got over the depression and was able to get back on with her life. Thank God she had no serious issues, but it shows you how much these things can mess up your life. And then I think there was one or two people that had issues starting their cars. And again, I always tell everybody we need to really clear ourselves. Everybody sage themselves on the way out too, but it didn't seem to help in this case. It was one of those things where um, whatever this was didn't care about the sage at that point, and that's pretty much the last time I ever saged up before going into a investigation. If you don't know what sage is or why we would sage up, we did say a prayer, asking God for spiritual protection going into this location. But also, we used white sage. Basically, the Indians believed that white sage warded off negative energy, and they would use it around their camps and stuff to basically ward off negative energy from their camps and negative entities. Um, it's also used with a prayer as they're doing it, and so that's why we're saying a prayer and stuff. But at this point, again, lesson learned, that didn't work. Some people still use it, some people don't, but it was just a form of spiritual protection that we were trying to use and stuff like that. So again, I want to be careful here. We don't believe the attachment was on the clients. The activity seemed to be attached to objects inside either one or multiple storage units. Um, but it did raise the question whether objects with attachments can affect people connected to them, even if the attachment's not directly on the person. Can something connect to an object? Can something connected to an object influence the environment around them, including the owner? Can it create heaviness? Can it stir up stress, fear, emotional pressure, or strange events? These are the kind of questions this case brought up. And while we can't claim that every event was paranormal in nature, the timing and the pattern made it something we had to take seriously. Um, Again, everybody, after the case was done, we kept checking in with the clients to make sure they were okay. And after we stopped investigating, everything went back to normal. But they were still experiencing paranormal activity. And so we just kind of left that alone. All right. So, theories from the case. There are a few possible theories for what was happening. The first theory is that the object inside one or more of the storage units was the main source of the activity. Maybe one of them had a stronger attachment or several strong attachments. Maybe everything else was being affected by that one object. The second theory is that multiple objects were active, which seems to be true. This would explain why there's multiple types of activity instead of one consistent pattern. If more than one item had energy attached to it, the units themselves could have become highly active. If more than one item had energy attached to it, the units themselves could have become highly active and created a highly active environment. The third theory is that the units became an energy hotspot. Emotionally charged, haunted, cursed, or spiritually heavily objects in one small space. Maybe that energy builds, maybe it interacts, maybe it amplifies activity. The fourth theory is that something darker was attached to one of the objects, or maybe multiple objects. The laughing EVP during spiritual protection is what makes that possibility stand out. A laughing during protection feels different than a random sound. It feels like a reaction. It feels like a mockery. It feels intelligent. The fifth theory is that some events had natural explanations. And we always have to say that. Some bangs could have been building noise. Some voices could have been sound contamination. Some appliance issues could have been mechanical. Some emotional heaviness could have been real world cases. But paranormal investigation is all about looking at the whole pattern. I'm putting fucking words in my head. And in this case, the pattern was strong enough that we consider it to be one of the more active object based cases from that era. So, lessons learned. This case taught us a few things. First, not every haunting is attached to a house. Sometimes the source may be an object. Second, spiritual protection matters. Whether people agree with every method or not going into a case with respect, boundaries, and preparation is important. And I completely and 100% agree with that. Third, haunted objects should never be treated like toys, even if they are a toy. If something feels wrong, If activity increases around an item, or if people report negative experiences connected to it, take it seriously. Fourth, safety comes first, and this is my top priority rule. Gas appliances, electrical issues, mental health changes, and physical danger need real world attention first. Fifth, documentation matters. Write it down, record the dates and times, track what happens before and after objects are moved. Pay attention to patterns, because sometimes the pattern tells the story. And my final thoughts. This case stayed with me because it changed the way we looked at hauntings. It was not a haunted house. It was not something we believed was attached to the clients. It appeared to be connected to objects inside rented. It appeared to be connected to objects inside a rented storage unit or multiple storage units. And that raised serious questions. How many people are storing items with unknown histories and never realize what may be attached to them? Old furniture, dolls, mirrors, jewelry, religious items, estate belongings, boxes that have not been opened in years. But sometimes an object may carry more than memories. Whether this case involved one haunted object, multiple cursed items, or something darker hiding among ordinary belongings, it became part of our investigation history for a reason. And from the California ghost hunters era to Deep Woods Paranormal today, cases like this help shape the way we look at haunted objects, attachments, and spiritual safety. So, a call to action. Have you ever owned an object that felt wrong? Something you bought, inherited, found, or stored away? Do you believe objects can carry attachments? Let us know down in the comments, guys. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've had a paranormal experience, haunted objects, cryptid encounter, UFO sighting, or unexplained case that you want to share, contact Deep Woods Paranormal. Hey guys, please don't also forget to follow, subscribe, share, hit that thumbs up button. We appreciate it. It helps get our videos out there. We're trying to make better content for you guys. And again, more content coming. We got gear, Bigfoot gear we're going to try out when shopping on Temu. We'll see how that turns out. Anyways, there's no judgment here, just open-minded discussion. Deep Woods Paranormal, and we're making the paranormal normal. And I will catch you guys in the next one.